Can't hear you, Sensei.
How's that? Can you hear me? Okay, thank you. The Dharma incomparably profound and infinitely subtle is rarely encountered even in millions of ages. Now we see it, hear it, receive and maintain it. May we completely realize the Tathagata's true meaning. Good morning, everybody. It's Thursday. Wow, day 4? Day 4. Yeah, this has been a strong session. And I want to credit Shuso and all the Ango participants that have been practicing hard since September, early September, when the fall session began. They have been really upping their meditation, more regular, maybe more minutes a week. They've been studying the Lojong training with Shuso, which are great reminders about how to be in our everyday lives. And they've been coming to sessions. So I think as a result, this session is really strong, very powerful. By that, I mean people are going deep and they're opening their hearts, their beings, which is a beautiful thing. And if you're not, it's okay too. So today is Buddha's Enlightenment Day, December 8th. Yes. Roshi found this fabulous story about the milkmaid Sujata, who had a dream. And in the dream, she was directed to get milk from 1,000 cows and feed it to 500 cows. And then to get the milk, a little bit, I guess, from each of the 500 and to feed it to 100 cows, all the way down to 1 cow. And she was also to go into the forest also. And with this milk from that 1 cow, the dream was, to just go into the forest. That was it, go into the forest. And there she met this emaciated man who was on the brink of death. And she offered this rich milk to him. And with that taste of that rich milk, it became clear to him that his path of radical asceticism, right, of fasting so many days, no food, no water, no sleep, was not the way to go. And so he started this middle path. Well, he decided after regaining some strength that he would sit under the Bodhi tree and not get up until he understood, or he became enlightened, I guess, awake. So he sat there for 7 days, I believe, right? 7 days. And all kinds of distractions came to him. Mara, all the distractions. We've got a lot of those today. We know all about it. But he wasn't going to get up until he understood something deep and fundamental. And was it the 8th day? Maybe it was the 8th day. Must be, because today's the 8th. He was enlightened. And he knew that the middle path was the way. This is the path that we practice, and he started it. This is what we have been doing, and as Myogetsu said in her beautiful talk yesterday, masters have been doing this for 2,500 years, this practice and awakening. So that's what we've been doing here for 4 days now. What was he said? He pointed at the earth. His words were, "I and all beings are awake." So this practice is very compassionate, actually, to stop and slow down. So compassionate. Why keep rushing about all the time? Why? Yeah, there's a lot of things to do for sure. But also, there's got to be some balance in life, the middle path, right? So this is a very sane practice that we are all doing. Good thing, because there's a number of us here. And yesterday was December 7th, my mother's birthday. So I have her here with me. I think she would have been 97. She was born in 1925, if anybody is good at math. I used to be good at math, but not anymore in my head. That she would have been. And on her 16th birthday, the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor. That was yesterday, which changed the course of history for many people, and especially Japanese and Japanese Americans living in this country. So I was remembering, since I've been talking about joy on Sunday, I was remembering my childhood, and really growing up in Hawaii was really deep joy just to be in that environment. I have wonderful memories of my sister and I, she's 3 years younger than me, climbing guava trees. And this was our afternoon snack after school, guava, you know, it'd be ripe yellow would be great, or they could be half ripe. And we'd be eating guavas in the tree. That was like the best. And then if we wanted to get a little fancy, we went to the kitchen, our kitchens, and we would make a bowl. We'd add shoyu, soy sauce, salt and pepper, a lot of salt, a little bit of vinegar, and then we'd mix it up, and then we dip our guavas in that concoction and just have the best time. That was like a gourmet dish for us. So my mother, she said growing up, her father, my grandfather, he started out as he developed his own transportation company, taking mail, you know, in Hawaii. This was in the early 1900s. And then he bought a small country store, about 1,000 feet elevation, so it was cooler up there. And they sold everything from dry goods to feed for cattle and horses, because they had pasture lands up there. Plus they had coffee up there, a lot of coffee acreage and coffee. So she was the best coffee picker I know. I mean, you get this basket around your waist and you pick all the red berries from the coffee trees, and she was fast. She'd be lugging around this 100-pound bag, this small woman. I was like impressed. And my sister and I, we were like maybe 10 and 7. You know, we'd pick a few red beans and then we'd end up on top of the tree sitting throwing beans at each other because there were so many, you know, mosquitoes down by the lot of grass, right? The cows would be in there, you know, eating the grass. You have to be careful for the cow pies, right, to step in on them. It was really, really pretty idyllic growing up there. And my mother, she said she really, growing up, there were 9 children in her family. She said she had an easy life growing up because she had 2 older brothers who were very responsible. Nash was short for national because he was the first child born in the Volcano National Parks when it became a national park a long time ago. He was the first child born there, so my grandparents named him National in honor of Nash for short. And so they were very responsible. They both did kendo, they did horse racing up there. It was kind of amazing. They were good on horseback. And when World War II broke out, her father, just after December, it was about in February, the FBI came to the door and said, pack up your stuff, you're coming with us. And my grandfather, you know, he was a proprietor at a store, and he was also the chairman of the board of the local Japanese school. So they took a lot of the priests and the leaders of the community to first, there was a camp up at Volcanoes National Park. They took them there first, and then they were taken to Oahu, a concentration camp called Honouliuli. It was sort of in the center of the island in a dry, hot, dusty gulch. And that's where they were kept behind barbed wires and tents. So they had just a couple of hours to say goodbye to their father. And he actually, 9 months later in the camps, he died of an aneurysm, a brain aneurysm. But before he died, he wrote a beautiful letter to my grandmother. And he said, you know, when I first got into the camp, I thought I was going to get out. but it doesn't look like that. And I don't know if, maybe he had a stroke or something, some premonition. But I want you to know that you were the best wife and that you really did a wonderful job bringing up the kids. And so I know everything is in good hands. And actually, we found this letter. It was written in Japanese, like just maybe about 10, 15 years ago, because my auntie, her younger sister, had it, right, with some things, and it was in Japanese, so nobody knew what it said. And finally, one of the cousins said, yeah, let's translate this letter. And it was like his last will to my grandmother, a beautiful letter of love. And we also found out he was a haiku poet. His name was Junsetsu, which means spring snow. We had no idea because there's nothing left. And he wrote, the last line was, he said, I am satisfied to be a small stone in the national effort for peace. And what he used to do was he would help the local people translate their letters to their family in Japanese, because they wouldn't know how to read or write. So he would write for them, and then he would translate when they would get the letters back. So her two brothers, Nash and Fat, Tadayuki and Yoshiyuki, the two brothers, enlisted for World War II, the war, right? There was a call for volunteers. They needed 1,000. 10,000 Japanese American men enlisted in Hawaii. In Hawaii, they did not have the concentration camps because there was such a big population. The Japanese had come over to work on the plantations at the late 1800s. So they couldn't have a camp there because there were too many Japanese as compared to California and the West Coast, where 100,000 were put away in camps. So in Hawaii, they just took the leaders, and then when there was this call for volunteers, 10,000 signed up or volunteered, and her brothers were two of them. And so they were part of the 100th Battalion of the 442nd Regimental Combat Team, who were also known, their motto was, go for broke. Go for broke, which means just give it all you got. Because they were also wanting to show that they were loyal Americans. And even though their parents, their families, were interned in concentration camps, they were still going to be loyal to the United States. And this regimental combat team had something like 4,000 Purple Hearts, the most highly decorated unit. They had like another, 4,000 Bronze Star. I'm not sure what all of these medals mean, actually. And 21 of its members were awarded Medals of Honor. And then in 2010, Congress passed this act that gold medals would be going to whoever served in this regimental combat team. So, and even surviving members in France, there were all surviving members were made chevaliers of the French Legion d'Honneur, Legion of Honor, because of their bravery in liberating France from German occupation. And there is another story of heroism of the Lost Battalion. This was a Texas regiment that were in the, I think it was the Vosges Mountains in France. And they were stuck on a summit, right, and surrounded by Germans. And so the 442nd was called in to try to liberate them. And this was really known as a suicide mission. I think they called it the Alamo Regiment. So let me read just a little bit from that. As the men of the 442nd went deeper and deeper, they became more hesitant, until reaching the point where they would not move from behind a tree or come out of a foxhole. However, this all changed in an instant. The men of companies L and K of 3rd Battalion had their backs against the wall, but as each one saw another rise to attack, then another also rose. Then every Nisei, these are the second generation Japanese, charged the Germans, screaming, and many screaming "Banzai!" through gunfire, artillery shells, and fragments from trees, and Nisei going down, one after another, they charged. Colonel Roland's grenadiers put up a desperate fight, but nothing could stop the Nisei rushing up the steep slopes, shouting, firing from the hip, and lobbing hand grenades into dugouts. Finally, the German defenses broke, and the surviving grenadiers fled in disarray. The Alamo Regiment, and there were not many left after that of the 100th Battalion, but her brothers survived. And there's a story of, they were in different companies, and one, I don't know if it was Nash or Fat, you know, they got there first, and as the different companies would come, they would call out their brother's name. And luckily, they made it. So this idea of war, the Dalai Lama says it's obsolete. War is obsolete. And in the book that I talked about on Sunday, he says, I'm going to just quote this. He says, "I am one human being born in Amdo province in northeast Tibet in a very, very small village in 1935. At that time, the Sino-Japanese conflict was about to start. Soon after, World War II began, then the Korean War, then the Vietnam War. Because of these wars, there was immense violence. At those times, the human mind, or at least those who were responsible for going to war, believed that using force was the best method for solving disagreements." Right, and so he said during World War II, when a nation declared war on another, its citizens would gladly volunteer, right? Just like my uncles did and the many who came forward to volunteer during World War II all across the country. But since the Vietnam War, right, people have been saying, hold on, wait a minute, is this the way to go? So it seems like we might be getting a little smarter. So anyway, right? Because I mean, we are now in Ukraine with a lot of devastation. But the Dalai Lama is hopeful that as long as, human beings remains, he says, there's going to be some limited violence. I guess we just can't help ourselves, but we're kind of trying to become awake and see that that is not the way. But he believes that serious violence, this mass killings, although with our guns around in the US, he believes we can eliminate with proper vision and method. So he's saying, in order to create a peaceful world, right, we start locally, right here first. That's what we're doing here when we're sitting. We're trying to see what's up, Buttercup. What's going on here? Or we could be daydreaming and just resting, right? There's a lot of that going on too, which is not bad. Because, I think we can get kind of too earnest sometimes in our meditations, right? And we're really trying to focus on the breath and our posture. And, it's like really a lot of effort, and we could just get all tight. And then it's really hard. It's really hard. So there's another wonderful story, right? A sitar player goes to see the Buddha. His meditation is getting difficult, right? And he's saying, I need some help here. Something's not working in my meditation. And the Buddha says, right, it's like when you play your sitar, when you tune your strings. If you tune it too tightly, what happens? The strings break, the sound is not so good. And if you tune your instrument too loose, what happens? Nothing happens, the sound is really off, right? So there's this balance of not too tight and not too loose. The Dalai Lama also had an audience with the Queen Mother, Queen Elizabeth's mother. And he said he was really looking forward to this audience with her. This was in 1996, when I think she was 96, something like that. And he says he had this question for her. He said, since you have observed almost the whole 20th century, do you feel the world is becoming better, worse, or staying the same? Good question, right? And she said without hesitation, better. She said when she was young, there was no concept of human rights or the right to self-determination. And now these things have become universal. So we're progressing. He also met with so many people. He met with a renowned quantum physicist, Carl Friedrich von Weizsäcker. Carl Friedrich von Weizsäcker, the brother of then West German Chancellor, President. And von Weizsäcker argued that the world was improving. And he noted that in the past, every German felt that the French were an enemy and vice versa. But things are changing now. And then the fall of the Berlin Wall. So we're making some progress. The fall of the Berlin Wall was not by force, but by popular opinion. So the times are changing. He said, yeah, Cuba is changing, China is changing. But he said he thought North Korea was the only one that wasn't changing. He said, yet. And he says, because of wider contact and more education, human beings are becoming more mature. So if we look at the world with a longer time frame, say of 100 years, he envisions a better, kinder, more equitable and joyful world. But we have to start now. Not rest on laurels. He says, after meeting with so many people, thinkers, scientists, educators, healthcare professionals, social workers, and activists, it is clear that the only way to truly change our world is through teaching compassion, sense of kindness, and genuine regard for others' well-being. We must promote basic human values, the inner values that lie at the heart of who we are as humans. The inner values that lie at the heart of who we are as humans. That's compassion. That is at our heart. But he says religion is not sufficient. Right? It's very important in human history. And he says perhaps for another 1,000 years will bring benefit to humanity. So he says, so now we have to think seriously. Just to pray or rely on religious faith is not sufficient. He says, it's not sufficient in terms of 7 billion human beings on this planet. So we have to find another way to promote these values. And he said, the only and he, especially our youth, he's saying, all of you teachers out there, teaching our youth about the source of happiness and satisfaction, right? That the ultimate source of happiness and satisfaction is within. And it's not machines, not technology, not money, not power. And again, he reiterates our basic so that he says, give us basis for courage and confidence.
Sensei, your microphone is going in and out. You might need
Hold
another.
on a minute, you're a little soft.
Your microphone is going in and off, on and off. So you might want to use another mic.
How's that? Is that better?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's better. Sometimes, it gets lost in my clothing because I put it on here and then everything's covering it. That's probably why. So it's important to realize that there is no joy without sorrow. We can't bypass sorrow and sadness. There's no joy without it. Pain and suffering really allows us to appreciate and experience joy. So that's what we're doing. We're breathing here. We're getting in touch with breath and body, trying to be present in our breath and body and not just our head, just being one thing. Another compassion practice that I think is also wonderful is if we can really see ourselves in other people, right? We are one. I am you, and you are me, and we are all together. Is this a familiar song? I am the walrus. Well, it's true. I am me, and we are you, and we are all together. It's right, we are one. So if we can really see ourselves in someone else, I think this is a great practice. Then we don't see other. We don't see other, because when you other people seems to get into big problems here. Can you see yourself in everyone here in session? That would be a great place to start the practice. So there's no sense of separation, right? That's what we're talking about in Zen, trying to cut through duality here. So you might try that practice. Yeah, so the book has a bunch of really good exercises, joy practices, he calls, how to overcome obstacles that face our life. Fear, anger, envy, anxiety. You know, recognizing that they come up, we're human, they will come up, they are part of us. But we don't have to allow them to gain a strong toehold, right? That's the whole mental immunity that the Dalai Lama is talking about, the practice that we do now, to be able to see what's going on in our minds and see about letting go and trying a different course of action. Let's see. Well, so this beautiful quote from the Dalai Lama, I mean, you know, he had to leave his country because the Chinese were invading, really. And you would think that he would have some kind of anger or animosity towards the Chinese. He says actually that he was grateful for the opportunities that exist in exile. So He says, acceptance is not fighting reality or ignoring reality, ignoring what is. Gratitude means embracing reality as it is. It means moving from counting your burdens to counting your blessings. And here's his quote. Exile really has brought me closer to reality. When you are in difficult situations, there is no room for pretense. In adversity or tragedy, you must confront reality as it is. When you are a refugee, when you have lost your land, you cannot pretend to hide behind your role. When you are confronted with the reality of suffering, all of life is laid bare. Even a king, when he is suffering, cannot pretend to be something special. So, right, any adversity, right, in the Lojong trainings, I know they say the more advanced maybe practitioners, they pray for difficult situations to come their way so they can practice. Yeah, so the Dalai Lama is a regular practitioner, 4 to 5 hours a day. He gets up at 3 o'clock in the morning and starts his practice, his meditation, his mantra, whatever he does, but it's for 4 to 5 hours a day. For those of you who have been in Ango, has it made a difference, the amount of meditation you have been sitting a day? Here, I know in Sesshin, we've been sitting a lot. Do you notice any difference? And what would your life be like if you continued this practice? Or is it just for Ango? In terms of suffering, I like my old life. I'm going to go back. So, in closing, I want to read this poem by Mahapajapati, who is the Buddha's aunt. Right when the Buddha was born, his mother died 7 days later, and so his aunt became his mother. Mahapajapati, protector of children, I know you all. I have been your mother, your son, your father, your daughter. You see me now in my final role, kindly grandmother. It's a fine part to go out on. You might have heard how it all began when my sister died and I took her newborn son to raise as my own. People still ask, did you know then what he would become? What can I say? What mother doesn't see a Buddha in her child? So with that, any questions or comments?
Sensei, what an absolutely beautiful talk, Sensei. Thank you so much. It was so moving. And I love what you concluded with, that what mother doesn't see a Buddha in their child. And I just think of what a precious mind that would be to hold, for all of us to hold that, how precious that would be if we could regard all people as Buddha, as with that same love and affection as a mother has for her child. So thank you, Sensei. Deeply moving, deeply moving.
Right, to see everyone as your mother in another life.
Yeah, I also wanted to say thank you for reminding us of the real world too. I feel like for me, I think the first few days have been kind of letting go of everything else, and now it's like this reminder of the middle way of, oh yes, there's this practice, and there's the world, there's wars, there's these realities waiting for us. They're still there. So nice to have that reminder too.
Yeah, what can we do, right? What can we do? There's so much to do, but we can certainly practice uncovering that compassion that was within us. And I mean, we forget all the time, so we need reminders.
Sensei, thank you. I did not expect, I think Carol said something like this yesterday. I did not expect to have my heart broken and healed, and then broken again, and then healed again so many times in your talk. That was really, really beautiful. Yeah, I feel like you clarified my life path here, so thank you. But really, yeah, that was very powerful.
Well, if there isn't anything, I actually have a hula I could dance. Yeah, I could dance a hula here because there's a memorial in the Vosges Mountains somewhere, wherever that Lost Battalion battle happened. There's a memorial there for the 442nd men who died there. And I don't know how many years ago, maybe 20, my hula great-great-grandmother, who's on the founder's altar, Maiki Ayu Lake, she took some dancers. They were invited by some Hawaii people to go to this place to honor the dead. And it's probably an anniversary, right, of the death. And so my hula grandmother, so her student, Auntie May Kamamalu Klein, her daughter was a dancer that went with Auntie Mikey there. And when her daughter came back, she described the place as to be similar to Waimea, which is where Roshi and I lived for a time on the Big Island. And she said it's similar to there in that it's a higher elevation, and in Waimea, it's mostly pasture lands, but there is some forested areas. And she says, just like Waimea, the climate there And so Auntie May, who was my teacher's teacher, Michael, he first started with Auntie May, but she died before he could finish as a kumuhula with her. And he studied with Auntie May. Auntie May choreographed this hula called Waika, which is the name of the district of the place we lived in, Waimea. So it's for this place. And it talks about the wind. It's also a song about right before there was a huge battle, a Native Hawaiian battle there in the early, I don't know what, what century it was. And this song, it was written, it is about the warriors saying goodbye or to their loved ones, because they don't know if they're going to return. And this song was actually, the person who wrote it was just inspired. He was driving along the road and this melody and the song just came to him and he had to stop and go into somebody's house and write it out. So this is the song Waika, sung by the Casimiro brothers in Hawaii. And this is also the song that in my hula training, it would be the last song we would dance after a grueling 3-hour practice. We'd be dancing on concrete for 3 hours for a while until my kumu built his place. Let's see, I have to find it. Okay. Anyway, so we would end with this song. And maybe if we can have that microphone here and just turn it on for the sound. So we dance this every week. Kuakula, the wind, another kind of wind, ki pu'upu. Deep emotions. The fragrance, the kauaie. Cold is the forest of Waika. Kuakula. Cold is the forest of Waika. Aloha, love. My beloved. Flower of the plains. Lay. getting harder to go down. Okay, so thank you very much, everyone. Continue your wonderful practices in terms, and also Samu work practice has been amazing. Thank you very much. And food has been amazing. Thank you very much, Tenzo. So thank you all.